Now, to begin our program today, we start with a little philosophy and background on the nervous system, and this has good basis in the AMA guides. In fact, in Chapter 16, the upper extremity chapter, which is the focus of the program today, it says on page 480, and this is a quote, it says, "Excellent knowledge of the morphologic anatomy and physiology of the nervous system is a prerequisite," unquote. And when I saw that quote in the AMA guides, I asked myself, is my own knowledge of the morphologic anatomy and physiology of the nervous system, at least of the upper extremity nervous system, is it excellent? And I had to admit that my own knowledge was not excellent. It was good, might have actually even been very good, but I didn't believe it to be excellent. And so I thought it would be a good starting point for both of us to improve our knowledge of the anatomy and the physiology of the upper extremity nervous system before getting into the AMA guides and the permanent impairment calculations. So this program begins with a brief review of the nervous system, and I call this Neurology 101 because this is going to take you back to some basic science concepts about the anatomy and neurophysiology of the nervous system, and this will take you all the way back to your medical school training, and sometimes those reviews are good for us, so bear with this, pay close attention, and you're going to see how all this material comes together and how all this background information starts to make sense when it comes to a discussion of specific entrapment neuropathies of the median nerve, the radial nerve, and the ulnar nerve, and then finally how this all ties together into your permanent impairment calculation, and additionally your understanding of the nervous system is what is going to provide the substance and the credibility for your conclusions. So you'll recall from Neuroanatomy 101 that in the adult, the nervous system is laid out into two basic divisions. We have the central nervous system and we have the peripheral nervous system. And later on as we go and we talk about the peripheral nerve entrapments, we're of course focusing on the peripheral nerve system. But in the beginning, to consider the organization of the nervous system, consider that there's two main systems. There's the central nervous system, which is composed of the brain and the spinal cord, and we refer to the central nervous system as the integrative and control centers. And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is composed of the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. And we consider that the peripheral nervous system forms the communication lines between the central nervous system and the rest of the body. For example, in our examples today, we're going to be talking about parts of the body in the upper extremities. So it's the peripheral nervous system that serves as the communication lines between the tips of your fingers and the central nervous system, for example. And we'll talk about communication lines that go both to and from the central nervous system. Now, in considering the peripheral nervous system, there's two main subdivisions of the peripheral nervous system. We have the sensory or the afferent division, and we have the motor or the efferent division. So first, with regards to the sensory afferent division, we're going to see two different types of sensory nerve fibers providing information from the periphery, from peripheral parts of the body, from the upper extremity. Say, for example, from the hand. It's going to be providing information from the hand to the central nervous system. And we're going to see information coming through the afferent division both from somatic structures such as skin, muscle, and bone, and also from visceral structures. So that begs the question, what types of visceral structures are there? in the upper extremities? Well, visceral structures would include mainly glands and smooth muscles around the arteries. And so it's the sensory afferent division that's going to conduct impulses from specialized receptors in somatic structures and visceral structures, and it's going to conduct those impulses to the central nervous system for control and integration. And then on the other arm we have the motor or the efferent division, which consists of motor nerve fibers, generally large alpha motor neurons and also smaller gamma motor neurons, and then also motor neurons, again going to smooth muscle and arteries, and also to glands, as well as somatic skeletal muscles. So the motor efferent division conducts impulses from the central nervous system to the so-called effector organs, and in the upper extremity we're talking about skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and also glands. And so let's break out the motor or efferent division a little bit further. That's broken down into two basic subsystems. First is the somatic motor nervous system. This is the voluntary portion of the efferent division. And these motor nerve fibers conduct impulses from the central nervous system to, of course, the skeletal muscles, for example, the bicep muscles and the tricep muscles, and all those little tiny muscles in the hands, which we'll get into here as we go. And then also the motor efferent division has the autonomic nervous system division, of which there's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic divisions. Now this, of course, is the involuntary motor portion, known as the visceral motor system, and again conducts impulses from the central nervous system, generally in the body, to a very limited population of effector organs. Throughout the body would include cardiac muscle, smooth muscles, and glands. Now we don't, of course, obviously have cardiac muscle in the upper extremity, so in the upper extremity we're conducting impulses to the smooth muscles in blood vessels, arteries, and arterioles, for example, and then also to glands in the upper extremity. So what kind of glands would we expect to find in the upper extremity? Well, certainly we have sweat glands in the upper extremity, particularly on the palms of the hands. We also have sebaceous glands around the hair follicles, and so certainly we do see autonomic nervous system effector organs in the upper extremities, and we'll talk about some of the autonomic findings that you can encounter in the event of peripheral nerve entrapment as we go along here. So let's review this a little bit. The nervous system, we have two major divisions. We have the central nervous system and we have the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system consists of 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and we're concerned here with the upper extremities, so we're going to be focusing on the cervical spinal nerves and how those cervical spinal nerves then converge to form the named peripheral nerves of the upper extremity. And this brings up an interesting point at this juncture. Even though in this program we're considering the upper extremity, is it possible that some of the principles that we're going to apply to the upper extremity, is it possible that they could also apply to the cranial nerves? And it's my opinion that these same principles do apply to the cranial nerves, and perhaps by analogy, even the permanent impairments as described for the upper extremities could apply also by analogy to the cranial nerves, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get in our case examples. And so just to continue our review, recall that the peripheral nervous system is divided into the sensory afferent division and the motor efferent division. And as we go on in the program, we're going to discuss examination procedures for both of these afferent and efferent divisions for the named upper extremity peripheral nerves. In all of these structures, the central nervous system, and it's along the primitive streak, then simultaneously while the neural tube is developing, and for those of you that have the PowerPoint presentation, and recall that the sclerotome is closest to the neural tube. And so a dermatome, let's talk about dermatome. And the AMA guides give us the AMA guides give us and I've also provided for you. So let's talk about myotomes. So with consideration